My name is Mary, and I'm 34 years old, born and raised in a quiet town just outside Asheville, North Carolina. My family, the Whitmores, runs a mid-sized civil construction company. My grandfather, Edward Whitmore, built it from absolutely nothing after World War II. He started in a tiny backyard woodworking shed and grew Whitmore Construction into what my father would later call a man's legacy. And he made it crystal clear, this legacy was meant to be passed down through his son. I'm the eldest, and my younger brother, Jason, is 6 years my junior. I still remember the day my mom gave birth to Jason. The way Dad's face just lit up when the doctor said, "It's a boy." He laughed, this booming, joyous sound echoing through the hospital hallway, hugged my mother, and then he turned to me, a 7-year-old kid, and declared, finally, a Whitmore to carry on the name. From that moment on, everything shifted. Jason became the absolute center of every meal, every conversation, every single expectation. When I brought home a certificate for academic excellence, Dad barely even glanced at it before asking, "Did Jason finish his dinner today?" And when Jason, bless his heart, got a D in math, Mom would just pat his head and whisper, "Well, at least it's better than last time." I was 12 when Jason turned 6, and he was gifted this custom-made mini wooden house in our backyard, complete with real windows and a slide, built by the company's own workers. Me? I got a small cake and a bookstore gift card. My grandmother, the only one who seemed to even notice how unbalanced it all was, quietly took me to the backyard and just held me for a long, long time. But she passed away early, and after that, no one ever brought it up again. My mother, Claire, she never openly admitted to favoritism, but she always played the mediator. "Your dad's just traditional," she'd whisper whenever I showed any signs of being hurt. "He doesn't mean anything by it." But from the way he looked at Jason, the things he said, even how he arranged seating at family gatherings, I always knew my place was on the sidelines. I don't know when it started, but I developed a strategy for survival: outperform everyone. I joined every business club, served as class president for 3 years, and earned a full-ride scholarship to the University of Georgia, majoring in construction management. I honestly thought that was the only way Dad would ever see me as worthy of carrying on the family legacy. Jason, on the other hand? He flunked out of college twice, changed majors 3 times, and eventually settled on communications because, it sounded easy. Every time he skipped class or got into trouble, Dad would just shrug and laugh. "He's a boy, he's just being young." I remember once, I was held after school for helping a group project run late. I got home 15 minutes past curfew, and Mom was waiting at the door, her face ice cold. "Who do you think you are, coming home this late?" Meanwhile, just 3 weeks later, Jason was caught drinking on campus, and Dad simply chuckled, "He's learning how to grow up." The older I got, the more I realized I would never be good enough, obedient enough, or right enough to be loved unconditionally in this family. At least not compared to Jason. Someone once asked me, "Why didn't you just leave earlier?" But how could I? I didn't just grow up craving love, I also loved the company. I loved the work. Every blueprint, every concrete form rising from a job site. I truly believed that if I just kept showing up, kept giving my all, one day I'd be valued. I was wrong. At 22, I graduated from the University of Georgia with a dual degree in construction management and business administration, top of my class. While my peers scrambled to land jobs at major firms in Atlanta or Charlotte, I returned to the small town where my family's business began. I brought with me a nearly 100-page proposal outlining strategies to expand Whitmore Construction into sustainable building, a promising market still untapped in the southern U.S. at the time. My father, Alan Whitmore, skimmed the first page and nodded. "Not bad, but don't expect a seat in the boardroom yet. You need to learn from the ground up." Then he assigned me the role of material supervision assistant, meaning I had to be at the warehouse by 5:30 a.m. every morning, inspecting every shipment of concrete, tile, electrical cable, signing invoices, managing surplus inventory. I didn't complain. I told myself, if he needs to see me work from the bottom to prove myself, then I'll do it. For the first 18 months, I didn't take a single day off, not even when I ran a 102-degree fever. I learned how to negotiate material prices, analyze seasonal cost fluctuations, and built a data system that saved the company nearly $270,000 in the first year alone. I sent a detailed report to the executive board, including a cash flow map showing leak points and proposed solutions. No one responded. 2 weeks later, Jason, just back from a semester suspension for cheating on an exam, was invited by my father to join the next strategy meeting. I was assigned to make the slide deck for my little brother. While I stayed late printing handouts, Jason strolled into the meeting in a wrinkled dress shirt with a latte in hand. Dad looked at him and chuckled, just like your grandpa. Got leadership in his blood. 3 months after that, I was pushed into managing the construction of a new medical center in Jackson County. A project worth nearly $8 million, with a $200,000 penalty clause for missing deadlines. It was already 2 weeks behind, and the lead engineer had quit due to conflicts with a subcontractor. I wasn't chosen, I was thrown into it because Jason's busy with the new branding campaign. I don't know where I found the strength, but I pulled it off. I worked 16-hour days, ate and slept in the site trailer, coordinated with the tech team, reorganized the construction schedule, and renegotiated subcontractor terms. We delivered the project 1 day ahead of schedule, saving an additional $110,000 off the original estimate. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the client's CEO shook my hand and said, "You should be running the whole state." My father stood there, smiled awkwardly, and pulled Jason forward for the press photos, calling him the new generation heir to Whitmore. At that point, Jason had been named Director of Business Development, complete with his own office, an Italian leather chair, and a brand new Ford Bronco paid for by the company. I was still driving my old college Toyota and bringing packed lunches from home. I kept believing if I just kept pushing, eventually they'd recognize me. But when Jason blew nearly $100,000 on a failed marketing campaign and Dad simply nodded, saying, "At least the boy thinks big," I realized there was no miracle waiting for me. Once, I was standing in the print room, hands trembling as I held a blueprint I had spent 2 sleepless nights revising. Jason walked in, glanced at it, and said flatly, "Don't overdo it, Mary. This company's going to be mine eventually anyway." I almost replied, but I just nodded, turned away, and quietly opened my phone. In my drafts, I had a custom organization chart, a version I created with my own vision, my own strategy. I had never sent it. That evening, my mother called me home for dinner, saying my father had something important to discuss about the company's future. I hesitated for a few seconds before agreeing. Deep down, I still hoped, naively, that he would finally talk about the supply chain overhaul plan I'd submitted last month, or at least lay out a roadmap for a future leadership role. I arrived 10 minutes early, as always. My parents' house was spotless, the yard neatly trimmed, like they always did when expecting guests. I brought a bottle of Dad's favorite Cabernet, the kind he sipped during strategic meetings, as if every big family decision had to begin with red wine. Jason showed up 15 minutes late, smiling with confidence, wearing a tight shirt and slicked back hair, boasting about negotiating to buy a lake house in Tennessee. Mom buzzed around, placing more toasted bread on the table, like Jason had returned victorious from war. Just after we clinked glasses, Dad stood up and cleared his throat. "I've been thinking a lot about the future of Whitmore Construction," he said. I sat up straighter, my heart pounding. I'm not getting any younger. It's time to pass things on. His gaze passed over me and landed squarely on Jason. "We've decided to transfer all operating shares, investment assets, and the ownership of this house to Jason." The room fell silent. My fork clattered loudly against the plate. "Jason?" I repeated, as if I'd misheard. "He's getting everything?" Dad nodded slowly. "The boy carries the Whitmore name. He'll carry on the legacy." I scoffed. "And what about me?" He didn't meet my eyes. "You'll receive 3 months' salary and keep the company car. Consider it a thank you for your contributions." My fingers clenched the cloth napkin under the table, nails digging into my palm until they drew blood. 3 months' pay for 12 years of nonstop work? No shares, no voice? "You've always been capable of taking care of yourself," Dad replied. "You're a woman. You'll have a family of your own. This isn't something you can shoulder forever." Jason leaned back, shrugged. "Don't be so dramatic. I could find you a spot in HR if you want." I turned to my mother. She said nothing, just bowed her head and sighed. In that moment, I knew this had been decided long ago. I was invited here to be told, not to be included. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly behind me. "Congratulations," I said to all 3 of them. "I hope you're happy with your choice." Then I walked out of the house I once believed was my home, taking nothing but my purse and the unfinished business plan still etched in my mind. 3 days later, I officially submitted my resignation. No meetings, no farewell, not even a thank you email from upper management. I packed up my office in silence on a Sunday afternoon. 12 years of my life fit into 2 cardboard boxes. I moved to Nashville. The city was just far enough to avoid curious relatives, just big enough to start over without being noticed. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment, modestly furnished, nothing fancy, just enough to remind myself that this time, everything would be built on my own terms. The company I founded was named Whitmore Strategy Group. Not because I clung to the family name, but because I knew that someday, that very name would prove I was the one truly worthy of carrying it. I started out as an independent consultant for a chain of contractors struggling financially due to COVID-19. I had no capital, no network, just knowledge and a reputation forged from sweat at Whitmore Construction. Even if my father never acknowledged it. The first 3 months were hell. I worked 15-hour days, lived on instant noodles, and only ran the AC for 1 hour before bed. But I had no regrets. Every signed contract was a declaration. I didn't need anyone's permission to succeed. I never thought I'd be starting over at 34, in a completely unfamiliar city, with no family, no safety net, and no name that carried weight. But it turns out, when you've got nothing left to lose, every opportunity can be a beginning. Whitmore Strategy Group, the name I kept like a challenge, was just a cheap line of text on a flimsy business card at first. My office was a corner of a rented 3rd-floor apartment where the noise from I-40 constantly echoed like a sigh that wouldn't stop. A laptop, a phone, and a collection of sample documents, that was all I had. I didn't register an About Us page on the website. I didn't mention the old company, not a word about my parents or Jason. Clients only needed to know I was Mary Whitmore, construction management consultant specializing in delayed projects, chaotic teams, and bleeding budgets. And I knew one thing: to survive, I had to be better than anyone else in the field. My first client came from a cold call. I heard that familiar desperation in his voice. "We're 6 weeks behind. The general contractor's threatening to walk. Can you come out to the site tomorrow morning?" I took an Uber to an industrial zone in Franklin, carrying a printed risk analysis I had once used to train my old team. Within 2 weeks, I helped them get the schedule under control, cut material costs by 12%, and keep their largest subcontractor from leaving. They paid immediately after final sign-off, without negotiating a single dollar. I celebrated with a sandwich and a can of root beer in the parking lot, then went back to drafting the next client's quote. Word spread fast in Nashville's contractor circles: that Whitmore woman doesn't care where you're from, she just knows how to get your site back on track. That's how I was introduced at a private meeting of independent engineers. One of them, Angela Cole, would later become my first business partner. Angela had been a lead engineer at a construction firm that went under during the pandemic, and like me, she had no one backing her up. We started picking up small projects, warehouse remodels, retail storefronts, quick office renovations for startups. I built standardized workflows, risk forecast systems, and implemented a real-time budgeting software so clients could instantly see where their money was going. I didn't make promises. I didn't wear cocktail dresses. I delivered results. After 6 months, I leased a real office, tiny, but with a window. On it, I taped a single phrase: "Work speaks louder than last names." I didn't accept any media features, no interviews. When old contacts in the industry asked about Whitmore Construction, I simply smiled and said, "We operate independently." No bitterness. It wasn't necessary. What I needed was results, and I was starting to get them. A major real estate firm in Chattanooga hired me to consult on a luxury lakefront community near Norris Lake. The project was worth over $25 million. Their project director, Mr. Gerald Stone, was skeptical at first of some rookie from Nashville, but after 3 weeks, he handed me a complex land file and said, "If you can sort this out, I'll give you all of Phase 2. I had it resolved in 10 days. 1 year after I walked away from my family, Whitmore Strategy Group had 17 active contracts, 3 full-time employees, and I was negotiating a lease for the 2nd floor of an office building in East Nashville to expand. I didn't have time for resentment. I was too busy to feel sad. But one fall afternoon, while preparing documentation for a new project in Louisville, my phone rang. A strange number from North Carolina. I hesitated, then picked up. My mother's trembling voice came through. "Mary, your father, the company's in trouble. We need you." I didn't say anything for the first 3 seconds. Then I replied, calm as the woman I'd become, I'm not part of we in that company anymore. And I hung up. But my heart wasn't as indifferent as my voice, because I knew if they were calling me at this point, then Whitmore Construction was far beyond what an apology could fix. The message came at 6:13 a.m., just as I was brewing coffee in the office kitchen. Mary, the house is at risk of foreclosure. Your father can't speak anymore. Jason, he can't handle it. Please call. Mom. I set the cup down, my hand slightly trembling. The last time my mother texted me was 9 months ago, just a cold e-card at Christmas, no words of concern. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because I wanted to see things clearly before stepping back into the same pit that once buried my trust. At 9 a.m., I called Kathleen, a longtime friend who worked at a local bank in Asheville. I need to ask, I said directly. Has your bank processed any recent mortgage filings from the Whitmore house? There was a brief pause, then Kathleen answered in a lowered voice, as if someone might overhear through the phone line. Mary, they're 3 payments behind, and their company's cash flow was frozen last week due to a loan covenant breach. I don't think your father is even listed as the operating officer anymore. I closed my eyes. No surprise, no shock, just the dull ache of an old wound being poked again. 18 months ago, Jason officially took over Whitmore Construction under the title third-generation CEO. From that day on, I stopped following the company's activities. But the construction world is small. Scattered rumors still reached me, Jason hiring unqualified college buddies, dropping longtime contractors for bargain ones, dissolving the green building division I once built, calling it too regulatory. Big contracts stopped mentioning Whitmore altogether. 3 months ago, a developer from Knoxville told me over lunch, it's hard for Whitmore to win bids these days unless they cut prices by 30%. They're desperate. I had a hunch, but now, hearing it confirmed by someone in finance, I knew my family was teetering on bankruptcy. By noon, my father called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice broken. Mary, pick up. We need to talk about the company, about the house, about everything. 3 hours later, Jason called. A surprise, I guess he still had the nerve. Hey, he said, trying to sound casual. Looks like business is booming for you. Congrats. Mom said you've got a new office in East Nashville. I stayed silent. He cleared his throat and continued, so, I could use your input. Whitmore is hitting a few bumps. He paused. Like, drowning in debt and about to get sued. I looked up at the wall calendar. 1 week from now would mark 2 years since I submitted my resignation. Jason, I cut in. Are you looking for advice or someone to clean up the mess you made? No, I went on, and if you're calling to fake reconciliation while still holding on to the company, pulling a 6-figure salary, driving your company-paid SUV to your weekly seafood dinners, then you've got the wrong number. Jason sighed, his voice finally serious. I didn't think it would get this bad. That's because you never believed it could get bad, I said. You've never had to face real consequences. Well, I'm facing them now, he snapped, his voice cracking. You think I want to come home every night and see Mom crying while Dad looks like a ghost? I said nothing. Mary, he said, his voice nearly a plea. There's not much time left for the company. I can't bear to see Dad like this another day. Please, do it for him. Not for me, not for Mom. For him. I sat in the quiet of dusk, staring out the window. The Nashville sky had turned a soft orange, late sunlight spilling across the exposed brick walls of my rented office space. Inside me, 2 feelings battled. Part of me wanted to turn away and let them face the consequences they chose. But another part, the one I hadn't extinguished, still wanted to see the Whitmore name survive, something more dignified than a bankruptcy notice. I didn't promise anything, but that night, I reopened the organizational plan I had written 2 years ago. This time, I marked the parts one had once skipped. 3 days after Jason's call, I flew back to Asheville. No announcement, no one waiting. I rented a car at the airport and drove straight to the old house. A place that once symbolized a family empire now sagging like its bones had been pulled apart. Knee-high grass, rusted shutters, the Whitmore Construction sign out front long gone, leaving behind stained screw holes on the weathered wood. My father opened the door. He looked far thinner than I remembered, hollow eyes, gripping a coffee mug like it was the last trace of the man who once ruled the regional construction world. "You're home," he said softly, his eyes pleading but trying to hold on to a shred of dignity. I walked in without responding. On the living room table lay stacks of financial files, bank statements, legal notices, supplier letters, and 3 months of overdue payroll records. "We've lost almost everything," my mother said, voice thin. "The bank will foreclose on the house if we don't repay the loan in 3 weeks. I sat down, pulled out my laptop, opened 2 contracts prepared by my attorney. "No small talk. I didn't come back to save anyone," I said. "I came to buy back what should have been mine all along." Silence. "I'll restructure the company, pay off the debt, renegotiate contracts, and stabilize the cash flow. But in return," I paused and looked my father in the eye, "I want 51% of the shares, full voting rights, and the CEO title. I run it. No interference." My mother leaned forward, about to speak. I raised my hand to stop her. "And Jason," I continued, "steps down from all financial operations. No company cards, no signing authority, no bidding participation. If he wants to stay, he can work in client relations, base salary, no bonus." "You're asking for too much," my father rasped. "I'm putting up both my money and my reputation to guarantee a company that's on the edge of collapse," I said. "If you want to keep the Whitmore name, this is the cost. Non-negotiable." No one said anything for 5 minutes. At last, my father lowered his head and signed the documents. My mother picked up the pen with a trembling hand. I slid the papers into my leather bag and stood. "Starting tomorrow," I said calmly, 7 a.m. main office. Everyone shows up. The next day, I arrived at Whitmore Construction's old headquarters at 6:45. The glass doors were dusty. Inside, the wall calendar was buried under meaningless rainbow sticky notes. The computers hadn't had software updates in ages. The air smelled of moldy AC. A company once worth tens of millions was gasping under its polished shell. At 7:12, Jason showed up, wrinkled shirt, holding a large latte. He walked in, looked around, and forced a grin. "Morning, new boss." I didn't respond, just tossed him a memo. It read, "Terminate all company credit cards issued to Jason Whitmore. Turn in company vehicle keys. Revoke banking access. Transfer to Client Relations Department. Report directly to CEO." Jason slammed the packet on the desk. "You trying to humiliate me in front of everyone?" I looked him straight in the eye. "You humiliated yourself. I'm just delivering the update." My parents arrived last. No one spoke. I opened an emergency meeting with the remaining staff, 14 people scattered across the room, faces tired and devoid of trust. I stood in the center of the conference room, the same one I was once denied access to, and began, "Whitmore Construction used to be a source of pride. Now it's a liability. I'm not here to reopen old wounds. I'm here to rebuild from the ground up. If you stay, you're with me to the end. If you can't take it, you're free to walk away today." No one stood up, but no one clapped. I knew trust can't be bought, but results can rebuild it. On my first official day taking over Whitmore Construction, I held a private meeting with the accounting department. The head of the department, a young man named Curtis, one of Jason's college buddies, opened the meeting with this question: "So, how are we planning to handle all these invoices? Wait for another loan?" I looked at him for exactly 3 seconds before replying, "Submit your resignation. Today is your last day." Curtis went pale. No further explanation needed. 3 other managers, also part of Jason's friend club, were let go within 2 weeks. Not out of personal grudge, but because they were the rot at the root of the company: no skills, no commitment, no accountability. I called 3 former employees who had once worked under me, people who had quit when Jason took over. 2 agreed immediately. The third, Mr. Rick Saunders, a seasoned technical manager, said over the phone, "As long as you're the one running the show, I'm in." The next step was contract review. I worked with the legal team to go through every active project, renegotiate with partners, cut unprofitable scopes of work, and cancel contracts altogether if the risks were beyond saving. One investor had filed notice to sue over delays in the Lakeview residential project. I requested a meeting, presented a full cash flow breakdown, highlighted technical failures caused by the old team, and made a proposal. I would personally reorganize the project timeline within 90 days, and in return, they'd withdraw the lawsuit and pause all penalties. It took 4 hours of negotiation, but they agreed. I returned to the job site like I was 25 again, hard hat, steel-toed boots, clipboard in hand. I worked side by side with every crew, overseeing concrete pours and inspection rounds. No one dared call me the old boss's daughter anymore. They knew I was the one saving their paychecks. Jason was confined to one role only, handling client meetings. He couldn't sign a single financial document. He wasn't allowed to speak on behalf of the company without my approval. At first, he resisted, but after a few meetings where clients grilled him on numbers he couldn't explain, Jason went quiet, then settled into the position he should have started in from the beginning. After 3 months, we stopped losing money. In the 4th month, we hit positive cash flow. By the 5th, 2 major contracts were reinstated. By the 6th, Whitmore Construction paid off all overdue supplier debts. The day I stood on the 3rd floor of the main office building, looking down at the parking lot filled once again with trucks bearing the Whitmore logo, for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel proud. I felt light, like I had finally dropped the boulder I'd been carrying since my father pushed me out of the boardroom. I called for an all-hands meeting. In that meeting, I announced, I'll retain 51% ownership and strategic voting rights, but starting next month, I'll step away from day-to-day operations. Some were stunned. My mother gasped, "You're leaving again?" I nodded. I never intended to stay forever. I came to save this company, and I did. I handed the CEO title to Rick Saunders, the man who stood by me during the hardest days. I gradually transitioned leadership to a qualified board with clear systems and tight controls. I returned to Nashville, to the small office of Whitmore Strategy Group, where every brick, every desk lamp bore the mark of my hands. A week after I left, Jason sent me a short email. I used to think I was good. Turns out I was just spoiled. Thank you for not letting the Whitmore name die with me. I didn't reply, but I printed it, filed it in a locked drawer as proof that to earn respect, you don't need to take everything back. You just need to show that without you, everything would collapse. And they know that now. I returned to Nashville on a March afternoon, just as the dogwoods began to bloom wide along the streets. The city welcomed me with soft sunlight and the familiar sounds of construction not far from my office. I stepped into Whitmore Strategy Group, where my 4-person team was working on 3 new projects, stretching from Chattanooga to Bowling Green. No one asked about Asheville. No one needed to. They simply greeted me with smiles and went back to their drawings, budgets, and client calls. That feeling, normal, unremarkable, was something I had craved for 10 years while living in the shadow of the Whitmore name. That afternoon, I checked the office mailbox. A cream-colored envelope sat among a stack of promotional material. My mother's handwriting. I opened it. Not a card, not a report. A handwritten letter. 4 pages, penned in her tidy, straight lines, just like when she worked as a technical secretary years ago. Mary, I read the email Jason sent you. I know you don't need anyone's validation anymore, but if I don't write this, my heart won't be at peace. I read every line she wrote, about my father now doing physical therapy after a mild stroke last month, about Jason, who had moved into a rented apartment near the office, no longer used a company card, and drove an old pickup every day, about herself, back handling invoices in the accounting department for the first time in 15 years and finally understanding why you used to say a balance sheet is more complicated than a family. Mary, she wrote, I once asked myself why I didn't speak up, why I didn't protect you. I don't have a worthy answer, Mary, but I'm sorry for making you do everything on your own, for letting you walk away from that house with no one stopping you. I folded the letter. I didn't cry, but my heart felt quiet in a way it hadn't for years. 3 days later, I got a call from the Whitmore construction office. Not Jason. My father. His voice was still raspy, but it no longer held its old authority, just sincerity tinged with hesitation. Mary, he said, I was thinking of hiring a management consultant for the Durham expansion, but Rick said there's only one person I should ask first. I let out a soft laugh. I don't think I have the bandwidth, I said, but I'll send you a list of 3 people I trust. And if you want strategic advice, I have a rate card for out-of-region clients. He paused, then chuckled, a quiet but genuine sound. Fair enough, he said. We ended the call with a thank you from him. Not my good girl, not I'm proud of you, just simply, thank you, Mary. And to me, that was enough. I no longer needed my father to see me as an heir. I was already the CEO of my own life. One weekend evening, Jason sent me a photo. It was the new sign outside Whitmore Construction's office. The logo was the same, but underneath it, a new line had been added, led by legacy and renewed by those who know where true value comes from. I didn't reply, but I printed the photo, hung it next to my desk, right below another one, me in a hard hat, standing at the Lakeview job site on the day my first project was completed, where no one from my family ever showed up. When people ask how I got through the favoritism, the hurt, I simply say, I didn't get through it. I rose above it. And only then did I truly understand, forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's accepting that you don't need compensation to live fully. I don't need them to say I deserve it, because I already know.